Today, we're stepping into a dark fantasy, a kind of grand parable of transformation. We're going to explore the absolutely epic, almost theatrical fall of a revered god and see how he was reborn as one of history's most legendary devils.
So, how on earth does that happen? It's not as simple as good versus evil, not by a long shot. It's this fascinating story of how belief and power and storytelling can actually conspire to completely unmake a deity, twisting them into something their original followers would never have even recognized.
To really get this dramatic fall, we've got to go back in time, way back, before any talk of demons, to meet the original pagan god Wotan, right at the peak of his power and his influence. So who was this god? Well, forget any images of a figure of fear. Wotan was complex. He was powerful. He was known as the Restless Wanderer, someone celebrated for his non-stop quest for knowledge and his mastery of ancient divine wisdom and magic. Now, what's really interesting is that Wotan's divine essence didn't just pop up out of nowhere. His identity is actually deeply tied to the classical Roman pantheon, connecting him to an even older, more established tradition. And this right here illustrates that shared lineage perfectly. You can see how Wotan just embodies that same mercurial energy as the Roman god Mercury. Both are travelers, wise men, magicians. This connection really establishes his noble pagan origins long before there was any hint of a demonic transformation. Okay, now we get to the central conflict. This is where the revered god starts his long, deliberate transformation into a malevolent outcast, a process you could almost think of as a great rebranding. The arrival of Christianity, well, that marks the dramatic turning point in our story. As this new faith started to take over, it kicked off a systematic and very intentional process of demonizing the old gods. And demonization was the key strategy here. Wotan was purposefully recast as a boogeyman, just a figure of superstition. All his divine attributes were reinterpreted through this strict, new moral framework. It was a tactic, right? Designed to neutralize his lingering influence over the people. And look how his most admirable traits were twisted. That noble quest for wisdom, it got reframed as the aimless, sinister wandering of a dangerous entity. The god of travelers suddenly becomes this threatening specter. This whole rebranding campaign, it culminates in his most terrifying new form, a legend that would haunt the folklore and the winter nights of Europe for centuries. You can see the process so clearly here. What was once celebrated as sacred insight and divine wisdom was now recast as proof of diabolical power. His knowledge wasn't a gift anymore. It became a temptation, a trick designed to lead humans astray. I mean, think about it. From Wotan's original perspective, he was the master of magic. But under this new framework, that very mastery became the definitive proof of his malevolent identity as a leader of dark forces. And amidst all these changes, one single folkloric role became the most powerful and lasting symbol of this entire transformation. And that is the legend of the Wild Hunts. In this spooky spectral role, Wotan's presence was still powerful, but now as a figure of pure terror. He became the demonic leader of a ghostly procession, thundering through the winter sky, a terrifying warning, not a blessing. And that cemented his fall from grace. The once sovereign god was now officially an outcast from the sacred, a figure who represented a direct threat to the new religious order. So let's move into the final act and see how the energy of this fallen god was reborn, how it was channeled into a new, more cynical and, more modern demonic figure. Mephistophles. He shows up in the medieval Christian era, a name many of us probably know. But he isn't some brand new creation. He's actually the final, chilling stage of Wotan's dark evolution. This brings us to this really interesting concept called a calque. It's basically a copy, right? A kind of literal translation of an idea from one culture into another. And that perfectly describes Mephistophles. He is a demonic calque of Wotan's essential spirit, just repackaged for a new Christian era. So he's the direct inheritor of that same mercurial energy we saw way at the beginning. You can see this unbroken chain linking the cynical, trickster Mephistophles directly back through the outcast Wotan, all the way to the Roman god Mercury. This quote just nails it, almost from Wotan's point of view. He would see this new devil not as some separate enemy, but as a reflection of his own searching spirit, just warped and distorted by the fears of a new time.
So, after this journey through the centuries, what's the big takeaway? What's the bottom line from this mythic transformation?
Well, this three-step evolution shows us how a powerful archetype can survive by being reshaped. It doesn't just disappear, it transitions. In this case, from a divine traveler to a feared outcast, and finally, into a demonic trickster.
Ultimately, Wotan and Mephistophles aren't really two separate beings. They're more like two faces of the same powerful myth. Together, they form this bridge, connecting the ancient pagan past with the medieval Christian world, all within a single mythological soul. And this whole history leaves us with a pretty provocative final question to chew on. If a revered god of wisdom can be turned into a devil through the power of storytelling, it makes you wonder, which of today's villains might have been yesterday's heroes? It forces us to think about how our own beliefs are constantly shaping and reshaping the world around us.